Hey Optimancers, Chris here. We are almost there. What you see in front of you is practically the culmination of years of research by thousands of the greatest minds of our age, the pinnacle of human understanding, the D&D racial option tier chart. Never since Neil Armstrong took that first step has the entire world watched in such anticipation. Where will the final official racial options land? What will be their fate? Will they climb to the reaches of Mount S tier or be lost to history in the depths of D tier? Today we answer the most difficult question that humankind has ever asked. Just how many points for each D&D racial option? If ever such an epic quest for an answer has ever been matched, it's the question, how could I have known these fundamental truths sooner? Because if only you had had this knowledge before you made your most recent character, which you now realize is pure garbage and the rest of your life is ruined. Alas, if only you had gone into the video description on any of my videos, you would have found your answer. For there the link to the mighty Patreon would take you to a magical land where a chosen few gained this knowledge in ages past, without interruption, and now all of them live in happiness and a greater understanding. It is like the power of time travel, but even better. So what is all this hullabaloo? I am assigning points to racial features, adding them up, then placing each racial option in D&D on this tier chart. If you want to know how it works, the best way is just to click the link at the top of your screen for my initial video that goes over the methodology. This was to be the final video of the series with official racial options, though due to popular demand, I'm extending this video series with 2 more videos. Stick through to the end of the video and I'll be going over those plans. Now there have been some who say my point values are wrong. There are others that say that elves should have gotten extra points due to access to elven accuracy. There are others who have asked, where are the dragon-marked races? Where are the half-elf variants? Others who have commented, how do I use this comment section to ask a question? These are excellent questions and comments, and I think I have a solution. So after completing the ranks in this video, I will explain not only how you can determine the exact point value for a half-wood elf, but also where it would rank on this chart. But for now, this is the tier ranking video that I call Bits and Pieces, for all the odds and ends that I haven't fit in any of my previous videos. Let's start with Custom Lineage. Now in my opinion, Custom Lineage is the most powerful racial option in the game. But clearly my opinion is wrong because that's not how the points worked out. Now, Custom Lineage probably doesn't count as a race, but it does count as a racial option. We start with ability scores, and Custom Lineage has the disadvantage of getting only a +2, and that is a penalty of 20 points. Then, the free feat, and that's worth 125 points. And then the variable trait, which allows the Custom Lineage character to start with either proficiency in a skill, and that would be worth 5, or the one everyone takes, Dark Vision, and that's worth 10. So we have -20 for the ability scores, 125 points for the feat, and 10 for the variable trait, and Custom Lineage ends up with 115 points. So yeah, of course they're S tier, but lower on S tier than I personally would have thought, behind the Aasimar and ahead of the Bugbear. Let's move on to a weird place to find a racial option, the Dungeon Master's Guide. Eladrin. No, not that one. Eladrin. So there's this bit in the Dungeon Master's Guide that provides some information for making your own racial options, and the Eladrin was given as an example of a custom subrace before they were made official content. They get the standard elf goodies, Fey Ancestry, Dark Vision, Keen Senses, and Trance, but we get 2 more features. First, Elf Weapon Training, that's 4 weapons, 4 points. And Fey Step, you can cast Misty Step once per short or long rest. This is obviously inferior to a non-spellcasting 30-foot teleport because when you cast a spell with your bonus action, it adds spellcasting restrictions to your turn. So it is obviously not going to be worth 50 points. I figure it's still probably worth 30. And so Fey Step is worth 30, Weapon Training 4, Fey Ancestry 10, Dark Vision 10, Keen Senses 4, Trance 10, and the Eladrin, but not the real Eladrin, scores 68 points. And the weird Eladrin lands in B tier, tied with Thri-kreen and above the Pallid Elf. My recommendation, if you want to play an Eladrin, just play the real Eladrin. Kender. The Kender is actually the most recent publication on this entire tier list. Fearless. So this feature provides the Kender advantage on saving throws to avoid or end the frightened condition, and that advantage is worth 10 points on its own, but it also provides an insurance policy where, should you fail that saving throw anyways, you can choose to succeed instead. So this is like their own little legendary resistance, usable once per long rest. I figure this adds 14 points for a total of 24. Then Kender Aptitude, 1 free skill from a list, 5 points. Then Taunt. This allows the Kender to use a bonus action to provoke a creature that can understand them within 60 feet. The creature makes a wisdom saving throw, and the Kender has flexibility on the ability scores used for determining the DC. If the saving throw is failed, they suffer disadvantage to attack any targets other than the Kender until the start of the Kender's next turn. This is a proficiency bonus per long rest feature. I think this is reasonably good. I assigned it 35 points. So Fearless 24, Kender Aptitude 5, and Taunt 35, and the Kender racks up 64 points total, and they slip to the bottom of B tier, right behind the Orc. Chromatic Dragonborn. So there are 3 Dragonborn variants in Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, and thankfully they are all superior to the 2 in Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. So we start with Breath Weapon, and this is much better than the Breath Weapon in the Player's Handbook Dragonborn. First, this replaces an attack, so it can be combined with extra attack. And secondly, it actually scales better, capping off at an average 22 damage versus 17.5 for the Player's Handbook version. I guess the one drawback is that the Chromatic Dragonborn has a 30-foot line breath weapon automatically, though I consider the 30-foot line and the 15-foot cone to be of roughly equivalent value regardless. I've given this 30 points. Then Draconic Resistance, which is the same damage type as your breath weapon. The highest scoring options are Poison and Fire, each are worth 17 points. I recommend Fire, by the way. Then Chromatic Warding. This allows the Chromatic Dragonborn to use their action to gain immunity to their associated damage type for a minute. This is usable once per long rest. Actual immunity is really good, though it's less dramatic when you're resistant to begin with. Still, I think this is worth 20 points. So Breath Weapon 30, Draconic Resistance 17, and Chromatic Warding 20, and the Chromatic Dragonborn totals 67 points. That puts them in B tier, tied with the Pallid Elf, and just ahead of the Furbolg. Gem Dragonborn. So, starting with Breath Weapon, we have some different damage types, and it's a cone, not a line, but ultimately, I'm going to give it the same score of 30. Here's the thing. Yes, you could choose Force Damage, and that would probably be worth a bit more, but if you do so, then you will have Draconic Resistance that is worth less. I'm going to assume we're going to choose the option that's probably the best on both fronts, which would be Necrotic, and I figure that is worth 30 points. Then Draconic Resistance, and again, we'll choose Necrotic, which we got 30 points for the Breath Weapon, and now we'll get 20 points for the Resistance. And that's going to be our best combination, in my opinion. Then Psionic Mind, which is Telepathy, and that is worth 15 points. And then Gem Flight, which is once per day concentration-free flight with a bonus action. That's normally worth 50, but it's 58 if you get Hover, which the Gem Dragonborn does. So Breath Weapon 30, Draconic Resistance 20, Psionic Mind 15, and Gem Flight 58, and the Gem Dragonborn adds up to a whopping 123 points. And they are in S tier, right ahead of Custom Lineage and behind the Aasimar. Metallic Dragonborn. The Breath Weapon is worth 30, like I said, 15-foot cone, 30-foot line. I figure those are pretty much even. Then Draconic Resistance, same as the Chromatic Dragonborn, 17 points. Then Metallic Breath Weapon. The Metallic Dragonborn gets a once per long rest special breath weapon that still replaces one attack that can do one of two things. Either it incapacitates creatures who fail a Constitution saving throw until the start of the Metallic Dragonborn's next turn, or 2, it pushes creatures 20 feet and knocks them prone if they fail a Strength saving throw. Both options are pretty good. The only real drawback is the once per long rest limitation, which is in line with the other Dragonborn variants. I've assigned this 30 points. So Breath Weapon for 30, Draconic Resistance for 17, Metallic Breath Weapon for 30, and the Metallic Dragonborn totals 77 points, and that puts them in A tier, tied with the Warforged and ahead of the Centaur. Grung. So the Grung is in this weird place of being an officially published, non-official race. It was published in One Grung Above, a charity project for Extra Life. I have to admit, before this series, I had never really taken a close look at the Grung before. Maybe some of you haven't either, so let's do it now. So from the top, Arboreal Alertness is basically keen senses, worth 4 points. Then Speed, so the base 25 walking speed is a minus 20, but the climb speed adds 10, so it nets a minus 10 score. I would have thought a swim speed might have been here, but it isn't. Amphibious is worth 10. Poison immunity, so you get both immunity to the poison condition and immunity to poison damage. This is really, really good. Much better than resistance. Sorry, Yuan Ti, who used to have this. This is a 50-point feature. Poisonous skin is really different. Any creature that comes in contact with the Grung's skin makes a DC 12 Constitution saving throw, or becomes poisoned for 1 minute, getting a save to end the effect early at the end of each of its turns. Also, the Grung can apply the poison to any piercing weapon as part of the attack, doing 2d4 poison damage on a failed saving throw. It is really surprising this doesn't require a bonus action, it's not limited use. Basically, if the Grung is using a piercing weapon, then the poison is added for free. The DC is low, and there's poison immunity and all of that. Still, this is probably 30 points. Standing Leap gives the Grung a 25-foot long jump and a 15-foot high jump with or without a running start. Now, what did I give the Satyr's Mirthful Leaps? 5 points? Well, this is a fair bit better than that, so let's double it for 10. And then Water Dependency. The Grung needs to immerse themselves in water for an hour a day. I assume during your long rest is fine. Or suffer a level of exhaustion until they take a long bath. This is definitely an inconvenience, but the Grung isn't very big. I think this is something you could plan around, like have a barrel of water that the Goliath hauls around or something. I figure minus 10 points is okay. So Arboreal Alertness is 4, Speed is minus 10, Amphibious 10, Poison Immunity 50, Poisonous Skin 30, Standing Leap 10, and Water Dependency minus 10, and that is a total of 84 points. The Grung leaps into A tier, tied with the Githzerai and just ahead of the Tabaxi. Owlin. So Strixhaven gave us more than just silvery barbs. Crazy, I know! The Owlin silently swoops into our racial rankings list. We start with Dark Vision, and this is the extended 120-foot version. That's worth 15 points. Then Flight. This is equivalent to the Aarakocra and the Fairy, and it's worth 100 points. Then Silent Feathers, proficiency in the stealth skill, and that is worth 4 points. So Dark Vision 15, Flight 100, and Silent Feathers 4 gives us a total of 119. That places the Owlin in S tier, behind the Gem Dragonborn, and ahead of Custom Lineage. Custom Lineage keeps getting bumped here. I'm honestly wondering if I undervalued feats at 125 points. Wait, of course I didn't. This list is perfect. Mythic Odysseys of Theros gave us a few new races, 2 of which were republished and therefore already covered, leaving us the Leonin. Walking speed at 35 is worth 20 points. Dark Vision is worth 10. The claws are sad. D4 plus strength damage, that's a 4-point feature. Hunter's Instincts is 1 free skill worth 5 points for the selection. And Daunting Roar. This gives the Leonin a bonus action where they can let out a menacing roar, and creatures of their choice within 10 feet of them that can hear make a wisdom saving throw with a DC based on the Leonin's Constitution modifier, or they are frightened of the Leonin until the end of their next turn. This is a once per short or long rest feature. This is pretty so-so. The range is bad, the duration is bad, it provides a saving throw, you don't get to select the ability score the DC is based on. The only real saving grace is, at least it's just a bonus action. This definitely is not worth using your action on. I'm going to give it 10 points. So Speed 20, Dark Vision 10, Claws 4, Hunter's Instincts 5, and Daunting Roar 10, and the Leonin comes in at 49 points, and they end up at the top of D tier, tied with the Tiefling. Okay, how about another one of those officially published, non-official races? Locatha. So Locatha Rising is an adventure published to support Extra Life, and it details the Locatha as a player option. Another race I was pretty unfamiliar with going into this tier ranking exercise. So, starting with Natural Armor, this provides the Locatha without armor an AC of 12 plus their dexterity modifier. This doesn't even have the novelty of the Loxodon's constitution-based AC, it's just an inferior natural armor. 6 points. Observant and Athletic is 2 set skill proficiencies, 4 each, so that's 8 points. Leviathan is the big feature of the Locatha, so check out this list. Advantage on saving throws against being charmed, frightened, paralyzed, poisoned, stunned, or put to sleep. That is a whole lot of saving throws right there. I mean, a whole lot of saving throws. Charmed is 10, frightened is 10, poisoned is 10, then paralyzed, stunned, and put to sleep. Now, there's not a lot of saves against being put to sleep, but paralyzed and stunned both happen. I'm going to give the whole thing 40 points. Yeah, breaking my own rule again. I already did it once, so I'm doing it again. Then, limited amphibiousness. So you get water breathing, but you need to be submerged once every 4 hours to avoid suffocating. Water breathing is worth 10, but this submerged every 4 hours is going to be a bitch. Just a reminder, the Grung needs to be submerged once per day. I'm giving this whole thing minus 10 points. Finally, we get a swim speed, and that is worth 10. So natural armor 6, observant and athletic 8, Leviathan will 40, limited amphibiousness minus 10, and swim speed 10, and that adds up to 54 points. And the Locatha ends up in C tier, tied with the half-orc, but ahead of the Hadozi. So we're going to go from an officially released non-official race to an official race from a book I wish wasn't considered official, Acquisitions Incorporated. Verdun. I should specify I'm not a fan of the book, but the Verdun race is fine. Let's start with Black Blood Healing. When the Verdun rolls a 1 or 2 on any hit die spent at the end of a short rest, they can re-roll it once. This is a ribbon feature. I'm going to give it 8 points. Then Limited Telepathy. This works like normal telepathy, except that it says, rather vaguely, that the process for communication is quite slow and limited, allowing the Verdun to transmit and receive only simple ideas and straightforward concepts. I figure still worth 12 points. Then Persuasive, a free skill proficiency in Persuasion, that's worth 4. Finally, Telepathic Insight, advantage on all Wisdom and Charisma saving throws. So this is worse than the Vidalcan Dispassion, which is worth 40, but it is better than the Kalashtar's Dual Mind, which was worth 25. Let's meet in the middle, say 33. So Black Blood Healing 8, Limited Telepathy 12, Persuasive 4, Telepathic Insight 33, and that is a total of 57 points, and the Verdun ends up in C tier, right behind the Vidalcan and ahead of the Hill Dwarf. Then we get to the lineages in Ravenloft, and I'm going to take a moment before I get into these to explain how they work. Lineages can be used in 2 different ways. First, we are given rules for lineages selected at character creation. When selected at character creation, lineages work mechanically just like any other racial option. Second, we are given rules for what happens when your character of a particular race transforms into a lineage, which only happens during gameplay. Then you kind of mix the two, so you get the lineages features, but you keep your own languages and movement types. I am ranking the lineages for selection during character creation because that is when you select your race. If I was to rank them based on combining them with some other race, then it's not really comparable. That doesn't belong on this chart. Dhampir. So speed, 35 base speed is worth 20 points. Then Ancestral Legacy. This provides the Dhampir with 2 skill proficiencies of their choice, and that is worth 10 points. Dark Vision. This is the standard 60-foot Dark Vision, worth 10 points. Deathless Nature means they don't need to breathe, that's worth 10. Spider Climb, so this is really good. The Dhampir can walk on walls or ceilings, and they don't even need their hands to climb. I figure this is a solid 40 points. Then Vampiric Bite. So obviously the novel thing here is it uses your Constitution modifier rather than Strength, but let's go through it. First, we have a D4 natural weapon. Now that would be worth 4, but it leaves your hands free, so it's doubled to 8 points. Then you get advantage if you're missing half or more of your hit points. I mean, if you really want to stay in melee with a D4 weapon when you're below half your hit points, I figure it's worth 5 more points. Then a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, you can get an additional effect on top of the bite, Either you regain some hit points, or you get advantage on a future ability check or attack roll. I figure it's worth another 5. The feature totals up to 18 points, and I would give it more if there was an easier way to get magical attacks with this damn thing. So Speed 20, Ancestral Legacy 10, Dark Vision 10, Deathless Nature 10, Spider Climb 40, Vampiric Bite 18, that's a total of 108, and the Dhampir ranks S tier, right behind the Harengon and ahead of the Eladrin. Hexblood. Okay, so quickly, Ancestral Legacy 10, Dark Vision 10. Alright, Eerie Token. This allows the Hexblood to make a token that can be used to establish telepathic communication or to see through the token, but if they do that, the token is destroyed and can't be replaced until they complete a long rest. I gave this whole thing 26 points. Then Hex Magic. They can cast Disguise Self, that's worth 10, and Hex, that's worth 10, and this is a 20-point feature. So Ancestral Legacy is 10, Dark Vision is 10, Eerie Token is 26, and Hex Magic is 20, and the Hexblood adds up to 66 points. They end up in B tier, behind the Chromatic Dragonborn, and ahead of the Firbolg. So just one more to go for this video, then I'm going to talk about what's coming, as well as addressing some of the missing stuff. Reborn. Ancestral Legacy is worth 10 points. Now, Deathless Nature. Let's break this down into its components. First, advantage on saving throws against disease. Maybe 1 point. I gave immunity disease 1 point, but we'll still say 1 point. Advantage on saves versus being poisoned, 10 points. Resistance to poison damage, 17 points. Advantage on death saving throws. That's really actually a ribbon. I'll say 7 points. They don't need to eat or drink, that's worth 1. They don't need to breathe, that's worth 10. And this last one here is just trance, right? And that's worth 10. Added it all up, and Deathless Nature is actually worth 56 points. Then, Knowledge from a Past Life. The Reborn can add a d6 to the result of any ability check using a skill. It looks to me like they don't need to be proficient to use this, and they can use it a number of times equal to their proficiency bonus per long rest. So what did I give the Kenku's Flexible Advantage? Looks like 20 points. Now, advantage is better than a d6, but getting to add the d6 afterwards surely makes up for that. So I'm going to give this 20 points as well. So Ancestral Legacy 10, Deathless Nature 56, and Knowledge from Past Life is 20, and that's 86 points. And the Reborn is in A tier, behind the Lotusden Halfling and ahead of the Triton. And here is our tier chart. As you can see, it's a pretty even spread. Now, you might notice it's not exactly even. D tier is a bit lighter than the others, and why is that? Well, when I was doing these videos, I ended up catching some stuff I had missed. A climb or a swim speed or a 35 movement speed that I hadn't noticed when I originally added up the points. Or a feature included something I had missed. So a few races ended up in different tiers than originally planned. Generally speaking, they ended up higher than I originally planned for them to be. But let's discuss some elephants in the room. And no, I'm not talking about the Loxodon. I was asked about variant half-elves. So in the Sword Coast Adventures guide, there are options for adjusting the half-elf, so it gives up its skill versatility and it replaces it with some features from some of the elven sub-races. Now, if you go into the video description, you're going to see a list of all the races and the scores that they received. You'll see the half-elf is 50 points. So if we were to take away skill versatility, then you'd be left with 40 points. Then let's say you add Fleet of Foot. How much is that worth? 20 points. So if you were to take a half Wood Elf and take the Fleet of Foot option, well, you would end up with a 60-point race. And here's the thing, you don't need me to tell you that, because you can figure it out for yourself. I've already given the point values for all the features that any of the half-elf variants would have, so it's just a matter of adding them together, and that is where I would have placed them on the tier chart. But what if I gave something the wrong value? Like you are certain that some weapon proficiencies are worth more than 1 point. So you think a particular weapon proficiency is worth 3 points or 5 points. Again, this is something that you don't need me to do for you. You can simply take the point value for the race that gets access to that particular weapon proficiency and add that many points and see where it would have moved on the tier chart. This is my tier chart, but there is no reason you can't have your own tier chart using the same method I do, except maybe you assign different points for different things. What about access to elven accuracy for elf races? This was probably my most common question. Well, let me ask you. What is it worth in your view? Well, add that much to elves. Problem solved. You think it's not worth points? Then leave the ranks as they are. You think it's worth 10, 50, 150? There's no wrong answers. It's subjective. Just add the points, adjust the order, and the tier chart is now correct based on your opinions. Now, what about the dragon-marked races? Why didn't I cover the dragon-marked races? Well, 2 reasons. First, I missed them when compiling my list, and once I discovered their omission, it was really too late to add them in for this series I had planned. And what about legacy races, like the old version of the Kobold? Why didn't I cover them? Well, because they've been republished. However, as I understand, some of you are still playing with that material. But honestly, this chart is busy enough without me going into outdated material to find more content. So here's where I get into 2 more videos. In my next video, that is going to be my what if list. What if I had ranked all the dragon marks? Where would they have landed? What if I had ranked all the legacy content? So I will go through all of those and assign some scores, and we'll see where they would have landed on this tier chart had they been part of this series. So how many points is Pack Tactics worth? I'll cover that in my next video. Then finally, I will be doing a wrap-up and learnings video. Here's the list I made in about 10 minutes before I started this whole process, and here's the one I made after the hours and hours and hours of assigning points. I want to see where the biggest discrepancies were and why those discrepancies occurred, and what I've learned as a result, and share them in a final video. And then that will finish up this series. I hope you'll join me. Otherwise, until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.